Don't be like Balaam. What does that mean? So today I want to talk to you about the story that involves Balaam and Balak. Who is Balaam? What is Balaam? And more importantly, what lessons can we learn from Balaam? This is a amazing story full of nuggets. Can't get them all, but we will get some. So stay tuned. But before we start, it was on my heart to share this first. Why do we meet? Why do we get together and listen to his word and continue to study it and learn from it? You know, I recall the words of Paul in thinking of this. It says, "For I do not want you to be ignorant, my brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud. They all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ." Amen. You can kind of sense that he's bringing in this idea of everyone is doing this. All. And if you follow what he was saying previous to this, he's trying to make the point not to get caught up in optimizing for the wrong things. So he says here in verse 5, and there's a serious shift in the tone as he introduces the word nevertheless. Nevertheless, with most of them, God was not pleased. Most is more than 50%. We like to think that at every funeral, most people go to heaven. We like to think that most of them who were baptized into Moses, who ate all the same spiritual drink, who ate the same spiritual food, who were all under the cloud and all. However, most of them, it says God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now, these things took place as examples for us. Why did these things happen? One of the reasons is they're examples for us to learn from, that we might not desire evil as they did. So I always want to start these conversations to remember that this is not just an acquisition of new information, of new knowledge about what the Greek or the Hebrew says, or learning the Bible stories, or satiating some part of us that feels guilty for not being in the Word. No, it's more than that. They're examples. There are examples that we must learn from. And in the story that we're reading today, there's a lot of great examples. And we're going to conclude with 4 lessons from Balaam that we need to learn from, all of which could be a lesson unto itself. So stay tuned. So in verse 7, he says, "Do not be idolaters as some of them were, as it is written. These people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play." Idolatry. In our world today that's full of entertainment, that's all many want to do. And I'm not just talking about the world. I'm not just talking about this country. I'm talking to the people of God who we've grown up and been indoctrinated and meshed with the ways of this nation. And we can get easily caught up in, we sit down to eat and drink and rose up to play. We must not indulge in sexual morality as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day. This is likely alluding to the story that we'll talk about today. We must not put Christ to the test as some of them did and were destroyed by serpents, nor grumble as some of them did and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of ages has come. Verse 12 always hits me right there in the gut. Therefore, as a conclusion to this thought that he's been carrying for many verses, even before chapter 10, he concludes it here. Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. I think the NIV says it a little bit differently. If you think you are standing firm, be careful that you do not fall. Do you believe you have your feet under you in your faith? Are you feeling pretty good about your religion, your routine, your relationship with God, your intimacy? Well, praise God. There's nothing wrong with that. However, there is a subtle warning that we must continue to employ. Be careful that you don't fall. For all these men and women were together, doing the same thing, all in the cloud, all eating the same spiritual food, drinking the same spiritual drink, reveling in it together. You may be part of a ministry or congregation or group of people, and everything is just feeling great. That's not enough. It's not enough to have a good feeling or to be one of the sheep in a group of sheep all bad at the same things. We must be sure that we keep in front of us what's truly important, which is what Paul talks about in the chapter previous to this. I do not run like a man running aimlessly or fight like a man beating an air. No, I run in such a way as to get the prize. Not to be heralded in my group, not to be just simply better than I was yesterday, not to be accepted among society or in my social spiritual circles or flex my spiritual muscles. No, but I want to make sure the prize is in front of me. You may be the only one, as we saw with Caleb. You may be the only one, Caleb and Joshua. And they wanted to stone them because they said, no, we can take the promised land. You may be the only one, but you're in the right place. So with that said, let's talk about what can we learn from Balaam? But I want to start with the question. So I'm going to start out a little bit with some teaching, just some interesting information. And I want to close with some practicals of what we can learn. But first, what is Balaam? What is Balaam is a strange question to ask. You normally ask who is, but what is? I'm going to ask that because I want to know, is he a sorcerer or a diviner? You'll see what I'm talking about. In Numbers 22, verse 6, Balak comes to him because, actually, let me give you some more context. Verse 4, in Moab, and Moab said to the elders of Midian, this whore will now lick us up all that is around us, as the ox licks up the grass of the field. So Balak, son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at the time, sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the river in the land of the people of Ammah, to call him, saying, behold, a people has come out of Egypt. They cover the face of the earth, and they are dwelling opposite me. Come, now, curse this people for me. Since they are too mighty for me, perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them from the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed. Context here. The people of Israel have left Egypt. And they're so numerous. They're starting to, and word is getting out that they're conquering people who have opposed them. They're running adjacent now to the people of Midian, and they're afraid. The people are so numerous, they're like grasshoppers covering the field. They're just licking up the grass like ox, they said. And he's afraid. What does he do to defeat these people, to attack, to secure his own nation? He calls someone who is known for blessing and cursing. And he comes to him asking if he can curse this people. So what is Balak? Let's think about magic. If magic can be separated, at least in this time, biblical times, there's two main ideas. One as a sorcerer and one as a diviner in divination. Sorcery has to do with being able to alter the future. We can actually change things. Instead of it going this way, we're going to make it go that way. We're going to move nature. We're going to move the way things are supposed to be. Divination, on the other hand, is simply predicting the future. So they consult different things or different entities in order to figure out what's coming. In summary, the magician who claims to curse or bless is a sorcerer, whereas the one who foretells events but cannot affect them is a diviner. What is Balaam? So obviously, if you look back at the scripture, he's being called to curse the people. Cursing the people means to give a bad, you're intending ill on someone's future. And that would be in the line of sorcery. So is he a sorcerer? Well, let's look and see. So let's look at divination. As I mentioned, divination is a science of reading omens, predicated on the assumption that the course of events is predictable. Its advanced notices are imprinted in natural phenomena or discernible in main devices. So we see that in some of these things here in the scriptures even. Casting lots, interpreting oil, inspecting the shape of liver in animals, consulting household gods, or the dead. All these things are divination because they seek to understand the future through these natural type things, whether it be animals or even stars, astrology. So we're looking to understand life and what's coming through these events, which is Balaam. So into which category of magician does Balaam fall? Balaam likely required hilltops and solitude in order to read astronomical signs and other omens. So if you look at what he's doing in some of the scriptures, a couple of times here, he's pulling away to a quiet place and he's saying, let's do this overnight. So maybe he's likely going to the hilltop to read the stars to understand God's purpose. And Balaam said to Balak, stand beside your burnt offering and I will go. Perhaps Yahweh would come to meet me, and whatever he shows me, I will tell you. And he went to a bare height, and God met Balaam. God met Balaam. This kind of confuses things, doesn't it? When you start thinking about divination, because if you know the scriptures, there are commands against divining. Yet we see the people of God doing things that are in the way of divination. But I think what's at stake here is that the ones that God has instituted and called are not a problem because they're talking to him. In this case, it may not be that Yahweh is talking to Balaam face to face, but God will speak to those in dreams and visions and many other means probably. But even the priests had ways of divining, if we want to use that way. The Urim and Thummim, if you're familiar with it, they'll pull it outside of their ephod, their breastplate area, to determine yes or no which way they should go. And that was a way of understanding God's purpose. Joseph was said to have a goblet in which the cup, divination cup, and probably he used water, oil kind of things. Who knows if he even did that? That may be something he was just employing and talking to his brothers. But the point is, interesting thing to think about. Either way, we see Balaam likely doing divination. As we go deeper into it, we can look at the language. Nahash is related to divination, and we see that word used in the Hebrew with what Joseph was doing. It says, is it not from this that my Lord drinks, and by this that he practices Nahash, you have done evil. We also see it used here. Like me, can indeed practice divination. This practice divination, this root word is Nahash, used again with Joseph, who was supposedly, and like again, we don't know, but he may have just been using it as his ploy with his brothers. And then we have another word, Kasim. Kasim is the label put on clairvoyance, this ability to see the future. So the one we just looked at, Nahash, has to do with the practice of divination. Nahash has this saying you have this ability to see. And you'll see it used very closely with Nahash. In Zechariah 10:2 says, for the household gods utter nonsense. So these household gods that they were using to try to do divination utter nonsense. And the diviners, these Kasim, see lies. So these guys are attempting to see into the future. Why am I bringing this up? This comes up again in Ezekiel for divinations. Why? Because we see Balaam, when he talks about what he's doing, uses the same words. For there is no Nahash against Jacob, no Kesem against Israel, no divination, no enchantment, as we look into it. And for omens, the same is used as he's talking about Israel. And we can see it again in these verses. So it's pretty clear at this point. The verdict is diviner. He's not attempting to change the future, but only predict it by connecting with God in one of these matters. And we hear that because he keeps mentioning, right? He keeps saying, as Yahweh speaks to me, I can do this. Yahweh tells him, but only do what I tell you, but only speak what I'm telling you. The word that God puts in my mouth, that I must speak. He's not saying I'm going to be a sorcerer change. I'm just going to tell you what I'm being told. I must take care not to speak. Must I not take care to speak what Yahweh puts in my mouth? So only what is being given to him. All that Yahweh says, that I must do. And I will not be able to go beyond the word of Yahweh to do either good or bad of my own will. What Yahweh speaks, that I will speak. I speak. So who is Balaam? I mean, if you look at these verses, what a noble man. You know, isn't it this the life that we all want to pursue? One that says, look, I only do what God's telling me to do. I only speak what he's telling me to speak. I'm not going beyond that. And over again, you know, we see half a dozen times about where he's constantly saying, you could try to get me to do this. And if you read the story, he actually does that. Yahweh tells him to say a blessing, and he says a blessing. They move him somewhere else and say, try here, and it's still a blessing. He's not giving them the answer they want to hear. He's only speaking what Yahweh told him to speak. So who is he? Good guy? Bad guy? What about him? You know, it seems like he's like the Messiah in how he speaks, because in John 5, didn't Yeshua, Jesus, Yeshua being his Hebrew name, he said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord. So he sounds similar. I can do nothing by myself. But only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, the Son does. I'm just going to do what I see the Father doing. Isn't that a good attitude? Now, Jude and Peter have something different to say, and many others do too, but I'm going to start here because we find something else interesting about Balaam that we haven't learned at this point, at least in this study. And in Jude 4, it's supposed to be chapter 4, I believe. I wrote that wrong. Verse 11 says, woe to them, for they walk in the way of Cain and are abandon themselves for the sake of gain. So whatever group of people he's talking about, which, if I remember correctly, are false prophets, he's saying these people have abandoned themselves for the sake of gain, probably getting money, property, or power, likely money, to Balaam's error and perished in Korah's rebellion. Balaam comes up even in the New Testament, as we call it, in Jude. He says this is Balaam's error. He even has an error named after him. There's a whole spirit of Balaam. What did Balaam do that has got him synonymous with being a person who's seeking gain, even selling out? This is how we would say it in some parts of the country. We would say you sold out. You sold out. So these guys have sold out for money. Likely money, could be power, but they sold out for the sake of some kind of gain. They wanted to get into a better position, get more of something. But that's Balaam's error. And if you look back at the context, it says, for certain people have crept in unnoticed, sneaky, who long ago were designated for this condemnation, ungodly people. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Just a second ago, we had a man saying he won't say anything outside of what was being told to him. Ungodly? Who pervert the grace of our God into sensuality? Wow, taking advantage of God's grace and perverting it to sensuality, deny our only master and Lord Yeshua the Messiah? Whoa. But these people blaspheme all that they do not understand, and they are destroyed by all that they, like unreasoning animals, understand instinctively. Woe to them. And that's where that came from. Peter says something similar if we jump down. In verse 15 of chapter 2, 2 Peter 2, forsaking the right way, they have gone astray. They have followed the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved gain from wrongdoing, who was rebuked for his own transgression. A speechless donkey spoke with him with human voice and restrained the prophet's madness. Bold and willful, if we can start in the beginning, these false prophets do not tremble as they blaspheme the glorious one. Whereas angels, though greater in might and power, do not pronounce a blasphemous judgment against them before Yahweh. But these, like irrational animals, creatures of instinct, born to be caught and destroyed, blaspheming about matters of which they are ignorant, will also be destroyed in the destruction, suffering wrong as the wage of their wrongdoing. They count it pleasure to revel in the daytime. They are blots and blemishes, reveling in their deceptions, while they feast with you. They have eyes full of adultery, insatiable for sin. They entice unsteady souls. What wicked men who are exploiting and taking advantage of people. This is synonymous with the Balaam that they know. So there's some pieces that we're missing. Who is this guy? Who is this? They have hearts trained in greed, accursed children. It's like he's pulling out the most vile language you can imagine. forsaken the right way. They have gone astray. They have followed the way of Balaam. All these men or all these characteristics are in a complete alignment with the way of Balaam. How deceiving. One of the first points you can get here is that you could have someone speaking honey, whispering all kinds of beautiful things, and come over and over again, but completely in darkness. Of course, the scripture comes to mind, the devil masquerades as an angel of light while being a roaring lion all the while. I want to take a detour here because in this story, we read the first passage. Balak, the one who employed Balaam, has a weapon of choice that we cannot miss. What is Balak's weapon of choice? Is it some kind of bio weapon? Is he sharpening his arrows? Is he switching from wooden artillery to metal? Is he recruiting more kingdoms and nations and armies? Nope, none of those. It's one that we would never imagine. The tongue. He's recruiting him to say something that's a curse. Powerful. Come now, curse this people for me. Can't you do it yourself? Since they are too mighty for me, perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them from the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed. He didn't ask for all these other tactics. This one thing he knew would be powerful enough to ruin a whole nation. If he could get Balaam to speak a cursed word, what does that say about our enemy? That you will not see this one coming. Many of us do this incidentally, accidentally, and not realize it. What is a curse? A curse is a word that is spoken that wishes someone ill for their future. All right, so it could be something like, a lot of men who are in prison have heard these words according to statistics. One day you're going to end up in prison. That sounds like a proclamation. That sounds like a promise. But that sounds like something that they're being cursed. Your children will suffer. That's not going to work. May you be, sometimes it can include literal curse words. Damned, is a real word, and that means cursed. May you be cursed. This is very powerful. All he wants you to do is stand over the people and speak a cursed word. That's the enemy that we fight. And sometimes we do his work and we do his bidding without realizing it. Maybe with a close loved one, a family member, a friend. Maybe with large entities at a job or government. We speak cursed words about what we hope their future will be. We should be careful about speaking these curses, for these could come back to us somehow, all right? Watch the seeds that we sow, for you reap what you sow. But the fact that he knew that this was that powerful should give us pause and ask, what are we doing? Are we in the spirit of Balak when we're speaking? When we're angry? When we don't want something to happen? Yeshua models this and shows us the power of the tongue when he talks about the mountain. Before we get to the mountain, actually, when he talks about this tree, on the following day, when they came from Bethany, he was hungry. And seeing in the distance a fig tree and leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves. For it was not the season for figs. And he said to it, may no one ever eat fruit from you again. And his disciples heard it. I like how they put that in there because they were a witness to what was said. Was that a curse? You better believe it is. May no one ever eat fruit from you again. May you not have any children. I hope you ... Those are curses. We have to be careful. Are we doing the work of Balak? And they passed by in the morning they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. Powerful words. You know, a story that I mentioned earlier that just always shakes me is the one with the mountain. He says, Yeshua answered them, have faith in God. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, and it will be done for him. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. Notice what he says. I say to you, whoever says to this mountain. Take note what it doesn't say. It doesn't say whoever thinks to this mountain, whoever believes in this mountain, whoever knows that this is true, whoever really, really wants it to happen and desires it. He says, no, open your mouth and say it. He showed us in the passage above, and now he's telling us the principle that's behind it all. Say it. He even said one time to Peter, get behind me, Satan. Say it. I wonder how many things that we've done that's caused damage in our own selves because we've cursed something in our own lives. I would never be. This is never going to happen to me. I bet I end up or to other people. And I wonder how many things we missed out on because we haven't said it. Say to the mountain, move. Balak understood this as a weapon of choice, and he employed it. He was willing to pay a lot of money to get it. Many treasures. Please just say the cursing and we're good. And we throw it around for free too often, not realizing that. Believe that you already have it. Not saying I want it. No, I already have it. And it will be done. That's how powerful the words are. But that's a whole another lesson. But I definitely want to highlight that because that's an important part of this story. I want to close with 4 points. Don't be like Balaam lessons. Yep, that's right. I know that's a complicated title. Don't be like Balaam lessons. What can we learn from Balaam? Because like we mentioned before, it's an example. It's instruction for us. This is not just cool stuff to learn about magic, sorcery, the divination, the cup of goblets, the goblets of oil, and that's cool information. And this is often necessary to give us the right context to make the adjustments we need to. We learned just a second ago about the power of a tongue and how Balak used that through Balaam, or tried to. But what else can we learn? So 4 lessons. If you have your pen and paper, I would encourage you to write these down. I'll summarize them at the end, but these are very important. The first lesson is this. Ask, why are you picking on me? Why are you asking me? Why are you coming to me? Ask this question. Why is that saying it? Because there's a principle that Yeshua laid out that's very clear. It goes like this in Luke chapter 6. For no good tree bears bad fruit, nor again does a bad tree bear bad fruit. For each tree is known by its own fruit. For figs are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor are grapes picked from a bramble bush. The good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good, and the evil person of the evil treasure produces evil, for out of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaks. The part that really got my attention is something very simple yet profound that Yeshua tends to speak often. Nobody goes to an orange tree to pick apples, right? So he says nobody goes to get figs from a thorn bush. What is he saying there? He's mentioning a basic truth that we all know. Nobody does that. So the question really is about ourselves. What do people pick from me? So if people know not to go to an apple tree for oranges, so what are they coming to me for? Because I can get a good sense of who I am or what I'm projecting to other people based on what people come to me for. Let's go back to Balaam as we make this point. So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with fees for divination in their hand. They came to Balaam and gave him Balak's message. If they're coming to you with fees for divination, that tells them, we know that you do this work. Seems pretty clear, right? Just like we established with the orange and the apple tree and all that stuff. He should have paid attention to that. That's the first lesson. Hold on. What kind of reputation do I have? And we can learn from that. When he didn't agree to speak evil they came with more. Why? Because he obviously has put out that energy that says, hey, you're all about money. So he sent more princes, more in number, and more honorable. And they came to Balaam and said, thus Balak the son of Zippor, let nothing hinder you from coming to us, for I will surely do great honor. See, he wanted gain, and they knew it. And whatever you say to me, I'll do it. This is how powerful his curse was. This is how powerful a curse is. It doesn't take a witch doctor, by the way, to do these things. We have this power of blessing and cursing, and we have to be careful how we handle it. For whatever reason, Balak was sought after in doing this. Come, curse his people for me. But Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the command of Yahweh, my God, to do less or more. Now, knowing who Balaam is, it sounds like almost a pretense of, hey, how much more do you got? Or a show of godliness that's really not there, just a shell that's pretending. But we can see that by the people coming to him, they knew that he was a man known for this. It reminds me of when I was a teacher in school and we have to do certain professional developments. And there was one we needed to do online. And a teacher assistant who I was working with asked me, hey, would you mind doing mine for me? I hate doing those. In essence, of course, she's asking me to cheat, to do hers, give her the answers and, pretend I was her. I was appalled by this. I was appalled. I don't cheat. But I was more appalled that she asked me. Because I have to ask myself, what kind of energy and example have I put out to make you even think that this is something I do? So I had to examine myself. Because people don't come to apple trees to forget for oranges. She's coming here. Maybe she saw some to suspect that maybe I would say yes. I still remember her comment. She says, I thought we were friends. I looked at her and I said, I thought we were too. I was offended. I could care less about the friendship if this is how it was based on. Because some friendships are based on that. And that's why they come. So the question we have to ask is, are you known? What kind of fruit are you known by? Do people come to you for the gospel or for gossip? For if they come for gossip, then something you've done, some energy you've put out, some example you've done says, this is where I can come for that. Are you known for prayers or for preying on people? You take advantage of people? Do you help people? What do people come to you for? So if people are coming to you for your help in these areas, you're known for that kind of person. Are you happy with what you're getting? As a man, it's important to me that I do not put out signals as a married man that I'm available. For there is a way to do that, right? There is a way to put out little signals of flirtatious signals to other women to say, hey, you have a chance here. So if I have women coming to me and saying, giving me the flirty eye and the whatever it is, the things that happen between opposite sexes who are attracted to each other. If I see that and feel that energy, I'm going to be startled and upset to say, Brandon, what kind of energy are you giving off to make anyone think that this is a possibility with you? See, there's some people in your life that you would never come up to ask for certain requests. You'd be embarrassed to, because it's so far from who they are. That's how it needs to be with you. But if people are coming to you for things that are not what God wants, you have to ask, what kind of fruit is hanging from this tree? Some women dress in ways that, I heard a preacher say it this way. If you're not a prostitute, put down your sign. Put down your sign. Because it looks like your sign says you're selling. Your sign says you're available. And I've seen some women be confused or angry at the type of attention they're attracting and the type of people they're attracting. This goes for men as well. There's certain energy you can put out. There's certain spirits that you can attract by the fruit that you give off. So lesson number 1, pay attention to what people are picking from you. And that'll give you a good indication if you're on the right track or not. Lesson number 2, look for turning tables. What's a turning table? You know a turning table. That means when you really thought things were looking one way and everything got turned and you're on the opposite side, so you see from a different perspective. Yeah, like that. And it's humbling. And what do I mean? Well, we see Balaam with a donkey have a turning table. Here's what I mean. In verse 23 of chapter 22, it says, "And the donkey saw the angel of Yahweh standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand. And the donkey turned aside out of the road and went into the field, and Balaam struck the donkey to turn her into the road." Where is the turning table? The turning table here is that the donkey saw the angel. He didn't. Balaam didn't. Yet he was striking the donkey to obey. But it was actually he who was not doing so. And when the donkey saw that the angel of Yahweh, she pushed against the wall and pressed Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck her again. He doesn't realize that the donkey is being more obedient than he is, because the donkey sees the angel with the sword in his hand about to kill them for not being obedient. But he's beating the donkey, but he doesn't see it yet. When the donkey saw the angel of Yahweh again, and they're pressed in between two walls, she lay down under Balaam, and Balaam's anger was kindled, and he struck the donkey with his staff. He still doesn't see it. Watch what happens here in a few verses later. Yahweh opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of Yahweh standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand, and he bowed down and fell on his face. So the donkey was on his belly this time. And now he finally sees, and he bows down. See, the donkey was actually doing exactly what he should have been doing. But the donkey had a higher awareness and IQ in this moment, a spiritual IQ, you could say, and was being obedient. Yet Balaam was beating him for it. When in actuality, Balaam should have been the donkey who saw this. But instead, he got to see what it's like from Yahweh's perspective to have your donkey, your servant, not do what you're supposed to be doing. Not bow and not be able to see the angel. And now he's bowing down. You know, how can you know when the tables have been turned on you? You know, there's one indicator that I've seen to be consistent in scripture and even in life, that you can know that Yahweh is using this turn the table incident to help you see yourself, to help you see that he is actually in the position of you. And that one thing is anger. Anger being kindled. In some of your most intense anger, Yahweh likely is turning the table on you and wants you to see what he sees from his perspective. Put it another way, the person or entity or thing or situation that you're angry with, likely Yahweh has brought that situation about so that you can see how angry he gets with you in similar situations. He wants you, the point is not the person that you're angry with or the situation or the group. The actual lesson was for you. And now you see Balaam humbled. He was hitting his donkey for no reason. This is not the only time Yahweh does that. If you remember Jonah's attitude towards Nineveh, he was running away and he didn't want to talk and call the people to repentance. And Yahweh allowed a plant to grow up, and the plant grew and gave some shade and then died. And Jonah got upset. But God said to Jonah, "Do you do well to be angry for the plant?" There it is again. He drew him in. "Do you do well to be angry for this plant?" And he said, "Yes, I do. Well to be angry enough to die." And Yahweh said, "You pity the plant, for which you did not labor, nor did you make it grow, which came into being
in a night and perished in a night. Should I not pity Nineveh? You see what he did there? He captured him in his highest moment of anger in this intense situation when his anger was kindled just as his is, and he turned the table on him. Shouldn't I feel the same way? This plant was here for a day. Should I not care for a whole person? That great city in which there are more than 120,000 persons who do not know their right hand from their left, and also much cattle. Should I not have mercy on you, this silly plant, for one day? If you study out the science behind emotions and memory retention, you'll learn that we have the greatest retention where emotion is the highest. This is an indelible tattoo mark on your spirit that's hard to forget when you go through a turntable like this. When you realize in that moment of your anger, Yahweh's talking to you, and it's actually not you being justified for your anger, but Yahweh being justified for his. David and Uriah is a popular story as well. David has committed a sin with Bathsheba and killed her husband. Nathan is sent as God's messenger to tell him the story. He tells of a story about a man who takes advantage of another man who only had one ewe lamb. David's attitude about this? Then David's anger was greatly kindled. You starting to see a pattern yet? He's doing this on purpose. Yahweh creates these situations in order for you and I to feel his anger, and then he turns the table. He was David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. And he said to Nathan, as Yahweh lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. Got him. You finally understand. And he shall restore the lamb fourfold because he did this thing and because he had no pity. I can see clearly now that it's not on me. And then what are the words that follow? You are the man. Can you imagine a thud that hit in the stomach of David when he knew he was found out? When he knew that Yahweh shared this same hot anger towards him? He turned the table. Lesson number 2, we have to realize that Yahweh turns the table, and we can do well to take note of those turntables because in moments of our highest anger, we'll often find Yahweh looking right at us saying, you are the man. It's you. These people are dumb. They're stupid. This job, this whatever the situation is, you'll oftentimes find Yahweh looking at you in your eye when we have enough time to calm down and realize it's you. I remember a time when I was angry with my dad, and just hot. I didn't even want to talk. I was like, if I don't have to talk to him again, I'm okay. I stormed out the car. I remember went up to the closet and actually wanted to pray that prayer. It was in my heart. But before I can actually utter those words, it's in that moment I heard him say to me, it was now, Brandon, that I died for you. Oh, that was probably 15 years ago. And it still hit me in my heart. Now, oh my, I don't even want to. He says, yeah, when you were like that. I love my dad. But I never forget that moment. Turn the table. Lesson number 3. What can we learn? Pay attention to the patterns. And the donkey said to Balaam, am I not your donkey on which you have ridden all your life long to this day? Is it my habit to treat you this way? Balaam, he's saying, pay attention. Have I ever done this? See, some of the things that Yahweh wants to bring about for us to see are going to be outside of a normal pattern, or it will be a pattern. And he should have recognized this as saying, this is not normal. Have I ever done this? The donkey said, is this my habit to treat you this way? No. What should Balaam have done instead of been hidden the donkey? If 3 times the donkey had done this, had he had some emotional presence and some spiritual wherewithal, he should have been asking questions. What's going on? Is God trying to tell me something? Is my donkey okay? But he was so into his own mind and his world, whatever he's doing,
that he did not see Yahweh. And here, this is a lesson we must learn. What's going on in your life right now where he's turning the table, trying to help you see something? So Samuel, he does the same thing. And Yahweh called to Samuel again the third time. And he rose and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." And then Eli perceived that Yahweh was calling the boy. See, after the second time, third, Eli finally was like, I see a pattern. This is Yahweh. This is how he works. It'd be wise for us to take this lesson and learn. He has these patterns that we need to be in tune to. Eli perceived that Yahweh was calling. I wonder how many callings have I missed because I didn't perceive this was Yahweh. Oh, that's strange. Oh, that's strange. Oh, that's a coincidence. This is why a lot of people say there are no coincidences. Because we see so much in life that is a setup. And we have to stop and say, what is Yahweh thinking? What is he trying to tell me? What is he trying to say to me? This is Yahweh trying to speak. Sometimes where my daughter was like, how do you hear Yahweh? When you're praying. But now we see some ways here that he speaks to us. One of the ways he turns these tables. Another way is that he has patterns. I should have put that up here. He's showing a pattern. We see in another story with the Philistines taking the Ark of the Covenant. They took the Ark, they brought it into their house of Dagon, the idol, and set it up beside Dagon. The next day, they saw Dagon had fallen face forward on the ground before the Ark of Yahweh. Then again, they rose early, and they saw the Dagon had fallen face down on the ground, and both his hands were lying cut. Do we have earthquakes here normally? Why is this God falling? Has this ever been doing it? And then he terrified and afflicted them with tumors. Okay, there's a lot of things going on here. And even the people, right, who were not God's people, were able to put two and two together. And when the men of Ashdod saw how things were, they said, "The ark of God of Israel must not remain with us, for his hand is hard against us and against Dagon, our God." We have to be able to put together these patterns. It's been said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. You can keep picking up that God if you want to. Okay, that's weird. Let's pick that up. Let's put some glue on the hands. Okay, no, wake up, pay attention. Are there things that you keep bumping your head against the wall? Nothing's working over and over again. You're praying for wisdom. You're praying for direction. And that door just keeps saying, close, close, close. It could be, not to say it is, that God's saying, no, don't go there. Could be that he's saying, wait, not now. It's something in a relationship. You keep doing something, or your significant other keeps doing something. You're not taking note of the pattern and making the proper adjustments. Come on, wake up. He's saying, take note of the patterns. I'm trying to tell you something here. And stop pressing your way through or being ignorant or aloof, which is even worse, just completely unaware of what's happening. But this is how Yahweh works. And the last lesson, catch the little foxes. This is a very powerful one. Those little cute foxes. Where does that come from? We'll start in verse 1 of chapter 25. We find Israel lived in Shittim. The people began to whore with the daughters of Moab. These invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel yoked himself to Baal of Peor. And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against Israel. Wow. How do we go from being God's people to being yoked to Baal, to the God, to the idols? And these idols weren't just something you just had in your home. You changed your lifestyle. Some of the idols meant that you sacrificed your children. You pray to them and do different offerings. This is a whole lifestyle. You're yoked to them. They're inviting the people to sacrificing to their gods, bowing down to their gods. Wow. All because of something very small. It doesn't take a lot, and we're going to look at that. Song of Songs says, catch the little foxes. Catch the foxes for us, the little foxes that spoil the vineyards, for our vineyards are in bloom. Those little foxes are so cute, but they will ruin your vineyard. Galatians says it differently. A little leaven leavens the whole lump. The question is, what little foxes do I have roaming around my life? See, the little foxes aren't things that are so huge like the David and Goliaths of our lives. No, they're small things that get in here through the windows and the cracks of our spiritual well-being. They come in through questions like, what's wrong with that? They don't come in with questions like, what's right with that? They come in with questions like, what's the big deal? I don't see a problem with. It's those questions that walk the line that says, this is not terribly wonderful, but it's definitely not beneficial either. Little foxes, cute little things. And sometimes we have these little foxes and we feed those little foxes. They get bigger and we notice that other people have the same little foxes and they're so cute, and we talk about them and they become kind of part of the family, part of our culture. And they will completely ruin your lives. Why am I thinking these thoughts? Why am I struggling with this? Little foxes, little bad habits of things we're watching, listening to, how we're eating, who we're hanging around with, all kinds of little things. There's nothing wrong with that. I can do this. I can dress like that, talk like that, watch this, listen to this. What's the big deal? Little foxes. But these little foxes caught up, and we see that Moses brings it up later as they go into battle, and they leave a lot of the people alive, particularly the women and the children. Moses and Eleazar, the priests, and all the chiefs of the congregation went to meet them outside the camp. And Moses was angry with the officers of the army, the commanders of the thousands, of the commanders of hundreds, who had come from service in war. Moses said to them, have you let all the women live? Behold, these, talking about those women, on Balaam's advice, caused the people of Israel to act treacherously against Yahweh in the incident of Peor. And so the plague came among the congregation of Yahweh. If you read about that incident, if I remember correctly, some 23,000 people were killed in that plague because Yahweh was so angry with how they joined themselves with these women. And it's these very women that they let live, that they were supposed to kill. He says, these little foxes. Ironically, we're talking about foxes, and it's a word that often is associated with some women. But this is not all women. But these women, these Midianite women, they seem harmless. Most women do. A warrior man looking at a woman, she is no threat. She has long flowing hair. She has beautiful lips and a body. She cannot wield a weapon nor have muscles to resist me. What damage could she do? Seriously. Little foxes. He says, you don't understand. Those little foxes killed 23,000. Balaam knew what he was doing when he gave the advice to have these women join with those men. That's the sneaky fox that he is. Maybe he couldn't curse, but he could give the advice of how to undo a whole nation of people. And this is for another lesson, but get to the men and join them with worldly women. Women who do not have in mind the things of Yah. And we see this with Solomon. We see this with Samson. We see this time and time again. Beware. Beware of these women. Now, this can go for men too, if women are listening to this, especially men, since they're the leaders of their home and they carry the spiritual weight of covering that household. But oftentimes, as a strategy to take down the strong man of the household, Satan employs these types of tactics. Catch the little foxes that have come into our homes through all kinds of means, through our devices, computers and phones, through commercials, through medias of all sorts, through people, through the way people carry themselves in conversations. Little foxes. What little foxes do you need to catch? Because they're ruining your vineyard. And you know, a really effective fox is the one that you don't readily see.
It's the one that you've gotten used to. It looks like a piece of furniture in your spiritual life. You just don't think about it anymore. They're just part of your life. What damage is that going to do? What's the big deal? But it's wreaking havoc. You know it's a little fox because, again, the question is, what's wrong with that instead of what's right with that? Are there things that you're doing that you can only pass through the filter of what's wrong with it instead of saying what's right with it? Simply ask what's right with everything you do for the next 24 hours. Go a week doing so, and you'll start to catch all the little foxes in that net. Just say, what's right about this? What's right about that? What's right about that? What's right about hanging here? What's right about watching this? What's right about sleeping at this time? What's right about eating that? And all these little foxes start to pick up their heads, and they'll undo your spiritual life if not caught. Revelations makes it clear that this little fox, this little stumbling block, as we're going to see, is what caused it. In Revelations, I know where you dwell, Revelations 2:13, where Satan's throne is. Yet you hold fast my name, and you did not deny my faith even in the days of Antipas, my faithful witness, who was killed among you where Satan dwells. But I have a few things against you. You have some there who hold the teaching of Balaam. Wow, this is thousands of years later. I don't know exactly how many, but a long time later. And Balaam's still coming up. His teaching, his spirit, the way of Balaam, like he has a whole way about him. That's how destructive it is that that he does. You don't want to have a name like that. The way of your name. And mentioning this type of evil doing. Hold to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak. Listen to that. He taught Balak. I can't curse them because I won't say anything, but I can give you some advice. Snake in high grass. Who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the sons of Israel. What's the stumbling block? Let's bring the women. Yep. Bring the women. I promise you it's going to work. We can't say it, but who would think they're going to be a threat? But inside of those women's, the spirit and their minds, they carried all these practices that were against Yahweh. And in order to please their wives and just being around them, they eventually start to do the same thing. So they might eat, who taught to put a stumbling block, so they might eat food sacrificed to idols and practice sexual morality. So this stumbling block, it's not a wall. It's not even a door. It's a block. I have 4 daughters, and right now there's toys on the floor, and I keep tripping over them. I'm talking about little Legos. And this big old man I am will start tripping and falling and catching myself, possibly breaking anything else that I hit, all because of a little Lego. It just takes a stumbling block. Sometimes we're so busy looking for the big things, and we're good. If you've been in the church and been religious long enough, you're not going to do the big things. It's the little foxes that Satan wants to employ. It's the little blocks that he says, no, just keep that there. He'll never reach his greatness. Every time he stumbles, he'll hurt somebody else. He'll get into something else. He'll end up eating food sacrificed to idols, sexual morality, impurity, just doing a lot of things. And he'll teach others to do the same just by his example. Just use the stumbling blocks. Catch the little foxes. So I'm going to close by summarizing those last 4 lessons. Which one do you want to focus on this week? Ask, why are you picking at me? Start to take note of what people come to you for. Is it in alignment with what you want and what God wants for your life? Watch for turning tables. It's easy to watch for this if you start to take note of the times your anger is heightened. You might even start to write it in a journal so that when you calm down, you can consider the context. What am I angry about? Why is this so upsetting to me? How might God feel in my position and how he's looking at me in this situation? Pay attention to the patterns. Is it my habit to do this? The donkey said. 3 times. I'm doing this over and over again. What's happening over and over again that he wants you to pay attention to? He's trying to speak so we don't be like Balaam. We have to learn these lessons. And then lastly, we just mentioned catching the fox. What foxes have you been putting off catching, that you've allowed to roam around in your spiritual space and not taking those foxes out and said, oh, it's okay. Everybody has them, these little foxes. I know I have some I can think of, and I've been purging these out more and more. For me personally, what I watch, my taste for media and entertainment is constantly being sifted. It's hard to desire and want and sit at peace with the things that the world put out with entertainment. It's a billions of billion dollar industry. And really all it is this listening to and yoking yourself with the mind of worldly men and women who are creating content to appease your flesh. They're not thinking about this is what's going to praise Yahweh. They're not thinking about I want to enrich your spirit. Most of the time, more than 90% of the time, they're thinking about you're going to love this, right? Many of the movies out there are about vengeance. I'm going to get back. Horror. I'm going to scare you. Sensuality, sexuality. I'm going to make your flesh feel really good and exciting. Romance and pulling your heartstrings and your just all over the place. But it's not enriching you spiritually. It's not helping you to develop a deeper spiritual vocabulary or hunger or desire for Yahweh. It's slowly drawing you away. So that's one of the things I'm thinking about. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope this lesson about Balaam has been helpful. And that, like we started, this is not just a lesson that's a story, another Bible lesson, click off, back to business as usual. But we would do well to take heed of the lessons we can learn here from Balaam, that we don't make the same mistakes. We don't be someone who just simply says, I won't speak and I'm outside of what he's saying and yet do exactly the opposite. But we be men and women of God. May Yahweh bless and keep each one of you. Thank you for tuning in. Be blessed. Thank you.